let's get into the bulk of today's show. It's another favorites episode. You all love the one that we posted on May 26th with our June favorites. These are our July favorites, players that we are trying to exit every single fantasy draft with right now. Some might call them our must-haves as well. Before we get into today's 6 names, I want to go back and review the 6 names from June. I'll start off with John Daigle's names. Chris Herndon, who has moved from the tight end 20 to actually the tight end 21, so dropped 1 spot in ADP, John Daigle. And Calvin Ridley, wide receiver 17 to now wide receiver 14. So he has climbed a few spots. Ian joined the show at that time. And his names were Joe Burrow, who has jumped just 1 spot, really just jumped over Ryan Tannehill up to quarterback 18. And Will Fuller is in the exact same position as he was around the top of the 8th round. Meanwhile, Josh Norris, has really been the person who has pushed ADPs. Carson Wentz jumping from quarterback 11 to quarterback 9. And more importantly, James Conner, running back 21 all the way up to running back 17, who we've talked about, Pat, is kind of now like that bridge running back name in between, obviously, all the names that we love at the top of the running back spot to the ones that we have questions of. But he is that type that, I even think should be after that Aaron Jones, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and above Todd Gurley and Leonard Fournette. But now he's going above Melvin Gordon, Jonathan Taylor, Le'Veon Bell, so on and so forth, whereas before he was not.
You want me to take off? Who do you want me to take off on a thought there?
Anyone.
Josh?
Any of the 6 names that I just mentioned, just so I'm not going on a 5-minute monologue here.
Joe Burrow, I don't know. I don't have any specific thoughts on. I kind of got lost in a trance during you reading of the 40 names. I will say I'm still like hands off James Conner. I was last year too. I just don't know if, what evidence is there that he can stay healthy as like a lead every down back. That was a huge concern the Steelers had heading into last year, and he kind of again proved that true. And I think this year the Steelers might be kind of more fully committed to more of a committee, even though James Conner is maybe now the most ridiculously ripped human being I've ever seen in my life. And but yeah, I could get burned on James Conner, but I have the durability concerns there. I think are real and kind of have been enduring over the past 2 or 3 years.
Dago, any comments on any of those 6 names?
I have since done the Bengals preview, and so I got to dive in a little more into Joe Burrow. And I think Ian, whoever that is, was on to something. Just the fact that he averaged 8.6 carries per game across 28 starts with LSU. Joe Brady's offense last year also led the nation in 11 personnel, whereas the Bengals led in 11 personnel last year. Burrow was great from shotgun in particular, and the Bengals are going to use him more from under center. But I think if they at least maximize his talent, Brian Callahan, the OC there, then he has not only the maneuverability in the legs, but the 8th softest projected passing schedule to climb over the hump and perhaps even beat someone like Tom Brady or trying to think, or Ben Roethlisberger, for instance, someone that we know just isn't going to use their legs at all.
We will talk about the Bengals in a little bit. I think it's a major credit to Joe Burrow and just, the public's perception of him. Again, that he's being drafted ahead of Ryan Tannehill, ahead of Jimmy Garoppolo, who has one of the softest starting schedules across all quarterbacks. He's being drafted ahead of Kirk Cousins. We don't know that much about Drew Lock other than 10 games last season, maybe even a little more, a little less. 5. Is it only 5 games? Wow.
It was only 5.
Okay. Excuse me. But that's 5 more games that we know of Joe Burrow. So it's, again, a major credit to obviously putting together maybe the best college football season of all time into joining maybe the worst franchise in the NFL of all time. So it's fascinating to see enough love for him already.
It's just so deep. I don't feel the need to be all in on a rookie quarterback. Just many variables, but I love Joe Burrow. If you're committed to matchup based play, Joe Burrow is obviously an amazing addition to your roster.
Okay, those are the 6 names from June, our must-haves, and I stand by at least mine. Now let's transition over to our must-haves of July. 6 more names, 2 each from us. Patrick Daugherty, you're up first. Give us our first nomination.
mean, I just feel like I'm coming out of a lot of drafts with DeAndre Hopkins, and I'm wondering, why does one of the best receivers in the NFL keep falling to the second round in so many leagues? And to me, someone who still has as good of odds as Michael Thomas or Devontae Adams or Tyreek Hill to finish as the number one overall receiver. And I think people are just kind of manufacturing reasons to be concerned about DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, we know about the new team wild card. I mean, look how quickly the Cardinals worked Kenyon Drake into their offense last year. This is like a very player-friendly offense, and an offense that was probably as starved for quality targets as like any offense in the entire NFL. And then to aggressively go out and get someone like DeAndre Hopkins, I mean, they are going to push the issue with DeAndre Hopkins. And I'm starting to feel like a broken record with it. As someone who's reached 150 targets in 5 straight years, and maybe you don't view that as like his over-under anymore, but even 130, 140 target DeAndre Hopkins in this offense with Kyler Murray, I just have a great deal of confidence. And I don't think he's going to be – he was used almost like Julian Edelman last year. And I think he's just going to be used more like DeAndre Hopkins, sideline dominator that we know and love. I mean, someone the Cardinals desperately needed a presence on the outside. And I just do not think they're going to waste DeAndre Hopkins. And if I get one of those running backs in the first round and then I get DeAndre Hopkins in the second round, I mean, it's just basically a perfect start to a draft.
I think he's being argued as a mid to low end wide receiver 1, if only because we know those target shares from Deshaun Watson the past 3 seasons, 30%, 32%, and nearly 35%, likely won't carry over with 3 other talented receivers in this offense. However, Hopkins obviously remains one of the best receivers in the league, and it's going to run on efficiency. And to me, he's still part of the untouchable big 5 with Michael Thomas, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, and Julio, whichever order you want to put them in. I have Hopkins at number 5 overall, but that's the more I think about it. And wide receiver 6, you see across the industry, it's just a different name depending who you ask. Chris Godwin, myself, I have Kenny Golladay. Ian, I saw, had Adam Thielen. Evan Silva has Juju Smith-Schuster. It's just a mix of people. But to me, Hopkins is just entrenched, given the offense, even if his target share dips 2 to 4%, given the offense and the quarterback play, he's an elite receiver.
I'm not even convinced the target share will really dip. And even if it does, I think it will be offset by an increase in the Cardinals' overall volume. I mean, the Cardinals made this move because they just never had someone to funnel targets to last year. Larry Fitzgerald finally looked his age. Christian Kirk, completely baffling sophomore season. And you don't go and get DeAndre Hopkins then to, not use him as DeAndre Hopkins. And I just feel very, very confident. And DeAndre Hopkins is a top 5 wide receiver. I mean, I had to bet money on him. I think he'll finish as a top 3 receiver.
So let me ask you that, Pat, because right now, and it really depends on where you're looking, right? In FFPC drafts, DeAndre Hopkins is going as the wide receiver 4. But if you check out like CBS and drafting right there right now, he's the number 27 overall player, right? Versus FFPC is the 17th overall player. These are the 3 names going ahead of him unanimously, basically. Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, and obviously Michael Thomas as the wide receiver 1. Pat, would you select DeAndre Hopkins over any of those names?
I would select him over Devontae Adams. He's the longer track record. To me, the higher floor, still the higher ceiling. And just in the kind of offense I want to target more than the Packers offense at this point. I mean, we know Devontae Adams is like the sun, the moon, and the stars of the Packers passing attack. But to me, every argument for Devontae Adams, like this floor, this target share, touchdown potential, I mean, they all apply to DeAndre Hopkins, and I just think he's done them better for longer. And I just like his offensive setup more, really. I'm not trying to make a negative argument against Devontae Adams, but
right.
It's just like we've forgotten that DeAndre Hopkins is like this truly special player. To me, nothing has really changed, except for the team.
It's hard to dislike any of those top 10 wide receivers, but just figuring out the reasons why you like this wide receiver 4 over the wide receiver 2 to me is interesting.
It's guesswork.
Well, it is, but I also think it's awesome that one of your must-haves is one of the top players at his position, because again, it can be difficult to separate those players at the top. Usually you just take the one that has fallen to you in many ways. I do want to point out that there have been some tendencies and trends in the past, right, Daigle, of wide receivers switching teams in their first year. It's a bit of stumbling blocks, some speed bumps along the way. maybe it's just me loving Kyler Murray. Maybe it's just me loving how Cliff Kingsbury changed his offense multiple times during his first season in the NFL. I really have no qualms or concerns of a talent like DeAndre Hopkins matching up and fitting immediately with a quarterback like Kyler Murray, even with the type of offseason that we've had.
I've only been taking Hopkins over those couple receivers we talked about, Devontae Adams in particular, if I start Kenyon Drake at the back of the first round in order to start a Cardinal stack. But to your point, Pat, it's true. Hopkins was used differently last year, whereas his first 2 years of Watson, he had over a 12 average depth of target. It sunk 2 yards last year to just over 10. So he was being used as more of a first down marker kind of guy as opposed to a downfield threat. So that could very well change with Arizona this year.
Even he was literally being used as Julian Edelman last year. And just Cliff Kingsbury is someone whose whole goal was to make offense simple. And literally days after acquiring Kenyon Drake, he gets this high touch, huge performance. I have a lot of faith that Cliff Kingsbury is not going to overthink DeAndre Hopkins. This isn't like someone going to the Patriots and like Cam Newton said, trying to learn like the calculus playbook. Like the Cardinals are not going to overthink DeAndre Hopkins, and they're going to funnel him the ball.
All right, let's move on. I'll go next. Typically, I tell you all to draft, players on good teams. Imagine that, because, they score more points than their opponents, which is kind of important. But that's not going to be the case today, because I actually think it's less important for wide receivers to be on good teams than it is for running backs and quarterbacks. That's a conversation for another time. But the name I want to bring up right now is Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd is going as the wide receiver 31, 86 overall, which is stunning to me because last year in a PPR points per game from a fantasy standpoint, he was the wide receiver 27. That means he outscored the likes of Odell Beckham, Michael Gallup, Terry McLaurin, A.J. Brown, T.Y. Hilton, Adam Thielen, DK Metcalf. I mean, I could keep on going. That's all on a points per game basis. And that was with Ryan Finley and Andy Dalton. What it comes down to me is this. The Bengals led the NFL in 11 personnel last season, 3 wide receiver sets, 76% of the time. Who's the team leader in slot snaps? That's going to be Tyler Boyd, 65% last year, 73% the year before. And where was Joe Burrow's number 1 wide receiver in college football last season? Justin Jefferson, 93% of his time in the slot, 134 targets. That'd be nice for Tyler Boyd to have this year. And Zach Taylor also has a history with slot wide receivers being featured players week in and week out with his time with the LA Rams and Cooper Kupp. So I have more to say, but I'll let you all interject right now. We haven't talked a lot about the Bengals this offseason, Daigle, but to me, Tyler Boyd is a screaming value right now at wide receiver 31.
We should always talk about teams after I write about them because then I'm well prepared to talk about them. No, the fact is Tyler Boyd ran the 6th most routes from the slot in the entire league just last year. And it's the same receivers that are coming back. If AJ Green comes back, that's fine because in 2018, he only played a total of 84 snaps from the slot, 29% of his routes. So he's not going to be a threat there. And we talk about AJ Green then soaking away targets from Tyler Boyd. But remember, with AJ Green in 2018, 9 starts, Tyler Boyd averaged 17.3 fantasy points per game. Whereas the past 2 seasons, 21 starts without AJ Green. So he's now the number 1 receiver, Tyler Boyd. He's averaged 4 fantasy points less, just over 13, because instead of playing the number 2 corner, he's playing team's number 1. So AJ Green potentially being available is actually a plus for Tyler Boyd. And I think that's where the information is getting misconstrued by a lot of people talking about these two. So I still think even if AJ Green's available, Tyler Boyd is the one you want among this group.
I would say that I want Tyler Boyd over AJ Green. Just the problem with Tyler Boyd is what is realistically truly the upside? And because you have AJ Green coming back, like you said, you have T. Higgins actually joining this offense as an early round draft pick who could command immediate targets. And just when you're at this is the part of the board where I'd rather take the upside behind Tyler Boyd, to be perfectly frank, like Marquise Brown, Will Fuller. Julian Edelman is going as the wide receiver 35, who I would rather have over Julian Edelman, who know is going to command a mammoth target share. With Cam Newton, who proved in 2018 and early 2019 he actually can check down. I'd rather have the turbocharged version basically of Tyler Boyd and Julian Edelman, at least when it comes to target share, like guaranteed target share. And I think he should be going ahead of AJ Green, but I don't think wide receiver 31 is necessarily egregious for Tyler Boyd. And there's just so much upside in the second tier of receivers this year. I mean, you have Cortland Sutton, AJ Brown, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, DJ Chark, T.Y. Hilton, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Parker, Terry McLaurin. But to me, it's not really that surprising that this is where Tyler Boyd is falling. And it's a good setup on paper. I mean, it is a setup fraught with variables, though. I mean, it is a new quarterback. There is more.
Improved, but like, no matter what, it's an improved quarterback. Basically,
we don't know that. We don't know that for sure. No matter what, it's improved with a 24-year-old rookie. I mean, there's no guarantee rookie Joe Burrow will be some seismic improvement on Andy Dalton. I mean, if I was betting on that, I would bet on that, but it's not guaranteed. I mean, we've seen lots of extremely talented rookie quarterbacks tank their rookie season. So I'm not just like penciling in monster Joe Burrow season. And even if we are, I'm not penciling it into like he's sparking some monster Tyler Boyd season just because he did with Justin Jefferson, who I don't love as a prospect, by the way.
Okay, a number of things. One, Tyler Boyd is going after AJ Green right now, 2 spots at the wide receiver position,
which is silly.
Right. He's also going after someone like Jarvis Landry, okay, who I would take Tyler
Boyd.
Jarvis
Landry to me is the more proven version of Tyler Boyd. You're looking at 2 extremely similar players. But Jarvis Landry's done this 5 or 6 years, where Tyler Boyd has done this 2 years.
But you also mentioned upside a lot. Tyler Boyd outscored a lot of those upside wide receivers last year in fantasy points per game. I mean, I mentioned Odell.
Without AJ Green, without T. Higgins, it's a totally different. The splits too, John. That's a kind of like a legendary fantasy stat, but I don't really know how telling that is for now. It's just the totally.
But the other part of that, Pat, is that the rest of these Bengals pass catchers all have questions. I mean, AJ Green just missed the entire 2019 season. John Ross has played 24 games in 3 seasons. T. Higgins, talking about rookies, is an absolute unknown as a rookie. Tyler Boyd is the only proven player as a pass catcher, including tight ends, on this Bengals roster. And it's also a Bengals roster that last year only led on 16% of their snaps, 31st in the NFL last season. And in neutral game scripts, they were 12th in the NFL in passing. 59% of the time they passed the ball in neutral game scripts. So Zach Taylor is an aggressive play caller passing the football in these neutral game scripts. And they're going to be trailing
all Bengals stats from they totally different quarterback. Like quarterback situation is weird all year. The second half of the season, they completely committed to the run. Like I just don't think many 2019 Bengals stats are that instructive, to be honest.
Okay, you can say no, but I would like to propose a lunch bet over one of the guys you mentioned. I would like to propose Tyler Boyd over Julian Edelman PPR this year.
Is this to Pat or to me?
This is
It's to me.
He said Julian Edelman's name.
It's just I feel like they're gonna have clone seasons, and so that's just why I'm betting on Edelman, just because I'm just even more confident in Edelman from Boyd. But when you put it in bet terms, it makes me feel not great about it.
That's skin of the game, buddy. You got to have skin of the game to believe.
I'll take. Yeah, I mean, I actually do. What are we betting on? Targets, catches, fantasy points?
I was going to say, PPR, total PPR points, unless you have a pivot.
No, I'll bet. I think Julian Edelman will probably narrowly outproduce Tyler Boyd in total PPR points. So I will take the bet.
We got to work on a lunch bet sounder, a bell or something.
We do. I got to work on having lunch with another human being for the first time. And
I'm keeping them though for the record. And so far we have 4 bets just to catch everyone up if they miss some spring pods. That is, I have Robert Woods over your Cortland Sutton. I have Tom Brady under 32 touchdowns, which is the line Josh laid out. I have David Johnson over your David Montgomery.
Yep.
And then I have Tyler Boyd now over Pat's Julian Edelman.
Okay.
I don't like my bet there, but I don't even like the first one anymore, really, either. I probably take
I thought we made it a month ago. So yeah.
Conviction. Okay. There's my Tyler Boyd rant. Despite what Pat says, he's a great value. On to John Daigle now.
He's not a value. It's just I understand why people are taking upside flyers instead of Tyler Boyd. Is really what I'm getting at. Like I'd rather have the Marquise Brown explosion potential, Will Fuller explosion potential,
right,
than 1,000 Tyler Boyd yards.
Right. Even though he, outscored fantasy points per week, all those upside players last year, including DK,
as someone who's in a situation that will not be repeated. He's not gonna be getting like a 30% target share or whatever this year.
It could be even a better situation. Who knows? Okay, Daigle, you're up.
I'm among the many that continue to cite Calvin Ridley as this year's Chris Godwin. And I think that's true in terms of a breakout player who is going in the fifth round, was going in the fifth round throughout the spring, and then will eventually land in the third round in the summer months in August. But in terms of breaking out like Chris Godwin and talent alone and dominating his way to becoming a wide receiver 1 overall, or not 1 overall, top 12, I think that's DJ Chark. Remember, 4.34 40 time at LSU, where he actually averaged 21.9 yards per catch in the nation in the SEC, then came from nowhere in just his second year, caught that 35-yard bomb in one-on-one coverage on the Nick Foles broken collarbone play, and then surged as the overall wide receiver 9 in fantasy through week 14 with working a lot with Gardner Minshew. And then that high ankle sprain, the final 3 weeks of the season, threw him off altogether. But the fact is, from Gardner Minshew, and this is missing a game, he still led D.D. Westbrook and the entire team with a 20% target share. And now we essentially have a year of development from both of these players with a proven rapport, getting 16 games against a soft schedule. So yes, it could all come crashing down for the Jaguars, or they could finish as AFC champions, Josh Norris. But either way, whenever we get to that range of Cortland Sutton, Stephon Diggs, DK Metcalf, even Terry McLaurin, the guy I am always smashing the button for because I believe he has more upside than all of those players this year is DJ Chark.
I love DJ Chark this year, and someone who was billed as extremely raw, and then was raw as a rookie, did very little as a rookie, had essentially non-existent expectations last year, and then just exploded them like from the get-go, from week 1, like you said, with catching that rainbow touchdown from Nick Foles. And I don't know, people are maybe creating concerns about how he fits with Jay Gruden, but I mean, he's, like you said, he has the chemistry with Gardner Minshew already, and just an athletic freak who put it on NFL film maybe quicker than people were expecting. DJ Chark has the potential to be a special player.
It's funny because looking back on and thinking back on the Jaguars' comments after they drafted him, they basically said, well, he's a really good blocking wide receiver because they were still, wanting to build their offense around Leonard Fournette. And then he can run fast in a straight line to clear everything out underneath. I mean, even as a second-round pick, DJ Chark has completely outperformed the Jaguars' expectations for him. The only issue right now, Daigle, is where he's going, because I love a lot of the wide receivers he's going around. Tyler Lockett just ahead of him, DK Metcalf just ahead of him, Robert Woods a couple spots ahead, right after him, Terry McLaurin, Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs. So it's, I think we can all find one wide receiver that we love in that area, or 2 or 3, and feel comfortable of those. And I think DJ Chark is absolutely one of those, because while I think it's fair to have questions about Gardner Minshew and the Jaguars winning a lot of games, since they do have the lowest over-under wins total in Vegas, his connection with Gardner Minshew on those broken extended plays is kind of undeniable. And it's just hilarious to me that last offseason it was spent talking about Nick Foles to D.D. Westbrook, and then DJ Chark immediately emerges as a legitimate number 1 pass-catching option on an NFL team.
As I said, I like all of those players, but he and Terry McLaurin, who I think we're going to discuss shortly, are the 2 guys that I can see being drafted inside the top 12 next year as true breakout stars this upcoming season. And so when it comes to that group, DJ Chark is the one I'm always clicking the button for.
All right, let's go to our next set of 3 names. Patrick Doherty, the world spins back over to you.
I've been coming away from a lot of drafts with Mr. Matt Breida, and I don't know how great. I feel like Jordan Howard's like a very easy person to underestimate, but Matt Breida is still kind of like the perfect 0 RB pick to me. He's still only, by the consensus ADP, the RB 41. He's higher or lower, a little higher in sharper drafts, a little maybe lower in some of the more like friend-based leagues drafts, but just someone who, going to one of the least talented backfields in NFL history, someone who his entire career been very efficient as a runner, over 5 yards per carry, behind an offensive line that he's not going to have in Miami, obviously. But someone who can move the chain, someone who's been efficient as a pass catcher, always between 8 or 9 yards per catch. Again, not a transferable stat to where he's going. Good offensive line that should be improved. The Dolphins use 2 top 40 picks on offensive linemen, 1 on a guard, 1 on a tackle. And just, someone who I think he's shown, even if it's in a Kyle Shanahan offense, it's not like it doesn't count. He can make plays on all 3 downs, and just a backfield that is desperately needed juice of any kind. And Matt Breida has more of it than Jordan Howard. And I think that's a winnable competition for Matt Breida to be the carries leader. And he's definitely the favorite to be the receptions leader. And it just seems like it's just too good to be true of a value at RB41 for me.
I still expect them to use Jordan Howard in the Kalen Ballage role. And that he was we talk about goal line runners. Like, they literally put Ballage in only on the goal line. And Jordan Howard has the ability to stumble in for 10 touchdowns in that role.
He's a lot better than Kalen Ballage. There's
yes, but there is just no way, like, their talent, their skill sets aren't comparable whatsoever. There is no way Jordan Howard leads this team in carries. Like, even if Matt Breida gets taken out inside the 10, like, Breida's the one getting you there. So he just reminds me of a player, even if they use like J.K. Dobbins and Mark Ingram that way, like Dobbins gets you down there. He's just such an explosive, the lightning to Howard's thunder player that it just sets up for 220, 250 carries as their leader this year.
The Dolphins backfield is the cheapest one to draft right now in fantasy drafts. Matt Breida, you mentioned going as a running back 41, Jordan Howard basically going directly after him as the running back 42. I mean, I'm terrified that Jordan Howard is there. I think we all understand what type of player Jordan Howard is. And to me, Pat, it goes in one direction or the other, that like by week 3, the Dolphins absolutely understand that not only is Matt Breida a plus in the passing game, which Chan Gailey, that's obviously vital for him. But 2, he's also just the more explosive and better runner. Or there's the fact that we go to week 12 and they're still splitting the work like 50-50, 60-40, so on and so forth. And it's just a headache. That's concerning because I mean, Matt Breida to me is one of those backs that you look at right now being drafted outside of running back 24 who can finish the season as a feature back. And I want that, and you can get him because he's going ahead of the likes of Kerryon Johnson, Alexander Madison, and Tariq Cohen. So if you want him, you can draft him. But just the existence of Jordan Howard is not fun. It's not fun.
No, and you're making a very important. Jordan Howard's a very easy person to underestimate, like someone that fantasy players are just never going to like because he doesn't catch passes and he's not super explosive. But NFL coaches clearly love like his rugged early down running, and that's definitely a threat here. And it is concerning that Matt Breida was like so easily discarded by the 49ers. I mean, that would obviously suggest they think he's just a product of their system. But yeah, I mean, Jordan Howard cannot be laughed off, but I would, like John, I would be extremely surprised if Matt Breida not only led in overall touches, but led in carries.
And I think it's okay to like both, by the way. I still prefer Matt Breida because he has the ceiling, but I think you can take both of their ADPs right now and be just fine.
It's true.
If you're checking us out on YouTube, go and subscribe to the Rotoworld Football Podcast on your cell phone, this thing. We're available on basically every single podcast platform, Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, obviously. So go and check us out. And if you enjoy it, leave a thumbs up in the bottom or like, favorite, do whatever you're supposed to do online, and leave us a review. That helps us out, probably most importantly. We are here again to help you win your fantasy drafts. That's what we're going to do up until whenever the season does kick off. Okay, I'll keep us going with one of my must-have players that I'm exiting every single fantasy draft with, and we just mentioned his name. He is Terry McLaurin, wide receiver 23, 63 overall. I've made this point 5 times this summer. It feels like I've made the same point with a lot of players 5 times this summer. So I'll try to keep it brief. First, we know that Terry McLaurin is very good. Like, he was amazing as a rookie. He was top 14 in yards per route run, according to PFF, which is a great predictor for future success. But second, even though this is a new coaching staff in Washington, we know what this coaching staff brings to the table. Last year, Terry McLaurin, under Jay Gruden and whoever else, saw 93 targets last season. DJ Moore under the Turners saw 135. So my basic question is this: what would Terry McLaurin do with 42 more targets? He'd go to the moon. That's what he'd do. Like, he's about to launch into outer space with all this volume he's about to inherit in an offense that, if it's led by Dwayne Haskins, great. That means he's better than Kyle Allen. But at worst, you get Kyle Allen. Well, but at worst, you get Kyle Allen, Pat, who last year gave DJ Moore 135 targets. So it's a no-lose situation that Terry McLaurin is in. And like Pat, I turn to you. Who is the second pass catcher on this Washington team? Because I have no clue who it is.
Darius Geis, Steven Sims, tight end whose name I can't remember.
All roads lead to Terry McLaurin. All roads lead to Terry McLaurin.
They do, and it helped. Ron Rivera has already directly compared him to DJ Moore, and Terry McLaurin could have been the offensive rookie of the year last year if like chaos had not completely befallen his offense and his season. Obviously, just a special talent, and totally. I mean, it's just weird. This is the wide receiver like 14 to 28. It's kind of like pick your own like gold mine. Like there's just a ridiculous amount of upside this year in the wide receiver 2, like mid-range wide receiver 2 to early wide receiver 3. There's so many ridiculously high upside players, but Terry McLaurin has as much of it as any of them. And I totally agree with your spiel about how good the setup is for him this year.
His production was poor in 7 starts from Dwayne Haskins last year, just over 8 fantasy points per game, but a 26% target share. And now factor in that across 16 games with all those additional targets you discussed, Josh. Not only will we see Terry McLaurin at the end of next year in graphics and like Chris Sims's rankings as a top 5 route runner in the entire league, we will also see him as a true second-year stud that could be drafted in the second round as early as 2020.
I'm trying to leave every single fantasy draft with Terry McLaurin. Like I want to be well above ADP. Like I mentioned, he's going as wide receiver 23. In Scott Fishbowl, I took him as wide receiver 19. Again, he is the one in that area that I am targeting. And I think, again, at worst, we can say that we don't know anything about Dwayne Haskins. I think that's a safe thing to say. Some might say there were positives towards the end of the year. Some might say there were a lot of negatives. There are also questions about, their offensive line, namely that left tackle position after trading away Trent Williams, and he didn't play last year. Well, guess what? In a Norv/Scott Turner offense, Carolina had major offensive line issues, namely at left tackle as well. These are hurdles that, to me, on paper and ADP wise might discredit Terry McLaurin, but actual on-field production, again, everything is going to go in his direction. And he is the key piece to this offense, obviously outside the quarterback position. And I really don't see any negatives, especially to where he's going right now. Okay. John Daigle, one more name. Want to close it out for us?
Yeah, we talked about this guy a couple of weeks ago, but he's someone else that, as I always bring to the table, players I keep drafting to this. That way everyone knows I do actually have skin in the game with these players. It's Todd Gurley. In the last 3 seasons, when Devontae Freeman was healthy in that Falcons offense, he missed 2018 pretty much. He averaged 58, 54, and 57% of their offensive snaps. So we should expect Todd Gurley to take on his 1A role with either Ito Smith or Brian Hill, working on 5 to 8 touches per game as the 1B. The difference is Freeman averaged 17.3 touches per game at that 57% snap rate last year, whereas Gurley averaged 16.7, essentially 1 fewer touch per game on 71% of the Rams snaps. So not are we expecting Gurley at his absolute floor to receive the same amount of touches as last year, but his ceiling is higher because he's going from the Rams' offense, which targeted running backs at the league's lowest rate, to Atlanta's pass-happy offense, which actually helped Devontae Freeman excel whenever he was available on the field because he did get those targets. So I know we keep citing Gurley's health, even though he only missed 1 game last year. But if we're reducing his snaps, however, keeping his touches the same, it may not be efficient, but that means he's still on the offense I want to chase, and he's the player over James Conner, David Johnson, Chris Carson even. He's the player I'm taking over those hold-your-nose recency bias players that everyone's scared to take, just because I think his entire situation is one that spells he's going to excel.
Todd Gurley, David Johnson is like a really interesting debate to me, but I agree with your entire Todd Gurley case. And listen, Todd Gurley's knee is, like you said, even though he only missed 1 game, his knee is still like one of the biggest wild cards in the entire NFL. But there's essentially no competition behind him. Maybe there's still some Ito Smith truthers out there. Do Quadre Olison truthers exist? I kind of doubt it. There's no competition. And just in this range of like kind of like the high end RB2s, I just prefer his question marks to the other players' question marks. I don't want Leonard Fournette's question marks. The Jaguars don't like Leonard Fournette anymore. Chris Carson is so rugged. The health concerns, maybe they'll scale back his usage this year. Finally, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we don't know how he'll translate on early downs. Le'Veon Bell, again, kind of in that Leonard Fournette zone where the team is like all but taking out like billboard ads saying they want to reduce his workload. And then just James Conner, who said, I can't necessarily trust to stay on the field. So Todd Gurley, the knee is a humongous concern, but yeah, just where Todd Gurley's going, I do love the value.
Yeah, Daigle, we discussed him on our podcast of making the case for players no one wants to make the case for, and he was one that I made the case for. So it warms my heart that someone else likes Todd Gurley as well. It comes down to, we have these knee questions, but he's still racked up over 250 touches in each of the past 5 seasons. And it also goes back to your point of passing game work. You know, his targets fell off a cliff from 87 down to 81, down to just 49 last season. I mean, they were eliminating those layups that Sean McVay was able to create for multiple years in that Rams offense. But as you mentioned, Devontae Freeman had 70 targets last season. So that is 21 more than Todd Gurley got. And Atlanta completed 51 more passes to running backs last year than the Rams did. So just adding on that passing game work where there is basically zero competition for, I can totally, I still like James Conner more, but I can totally buy someone wanting Todd Gurley in that area of the draft as well.
We keep saying his injuries, but the thing is, it's baked in as the RB15 overall. Yep. If it wasn't baked in, then we could argue his role is better than Josh Jacobs and Aaron Jones and push him into the side of the top 12 as a second-round pick. That's why I love him, because I think there's value at RB15.
Yep, I like it.
I guess he could still have further to fall, I guess, because he didn't miss time, like we said, but to the eye test, as we know, a very perfect metric, right? The eye test, that's what everyone in fantasy relies on now. He looked like a shell of his former self last year. I mean, but I don't know why I'm even doing contrarian tape, because I agree with both of you.
Some people, Pat, say the eye in the sky doesn't lie. I would tell those people it lies all the time. It's called bias.
The data is so exact.
We need a podcast with bets. Let's get bets on.
The eye test data is so exact that everyone has a different opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say, Pat, if you're looking like it is absolute floor, it's probably what Devontae Freeman put out last year, because Devontae Freeman was awful, and he still finished as the running back 22 in fantasy points per game. So it's not like
Todd Gurley. I think Todd Gurley has more left in the tank than Devontae Freeman does.
I agree. So. Even though I'll be forever Team Freeman. Okay. NFL drafted Bishop Sankey over Devontae Freeman. Okay, let's move on. That's going to do it for us. We'll be back next Tuesday. Go back and listen to our previous episodes if you are a new listener. And again, these were our 6 must-have players for the month of July. We also did a live draft about a week ago with Hayden Winks and Daigle and myself. Go and check that one out. Okay, for John Daigle, for Patrick Doherty, I am Josh Norris. Up the Villa. They're about to lose in 1 hour.
I was going to say, Josh, cut out your outro. I got a text during the podcast from a friend worrying about your well-being with the game about to kick off.
Look, there are 5 matches left. Villa, I believe, has won 6 or 7 all season, and they basically need to win 3 to not be relegated. So, yeah, very likely, guys. Very likely that this team doesn't play in the championship, and I have to go back to listening to them on radio every Saturday morning. So, my life.
Up the Villa.
Up the Villa. We'll talk to y'all soon. See you.